The soft hum of the airport was interrupted by bursts of laughter near Gate 27. It was early morning at JFK International Airport. Passengers rushing, coffee cups in hand, children whining, announcements echoing in the air. Among the noise, one particular scene drew attention. A teenage boy stood at the counter, his posture straight, a modest backpack slung over his shoulder. His name was Jalen Carter, 17 years old, eyes deep brown and filled with quiet confidence. He was dressed simply, jeans, sneakers, and a gray hoodie, but the way he carried himself suggested someone raised with dignity, not arrogance. "Index, please," called the airline staffer, a blonde woman in her early 30s named Karen. Her tone was clipped professional, but laced with impatience. Jalen stepped forward, holding out his economy ticket. "I'd like to confirm my seat to London, please," he said politely. Karen barely glanced at him before typing something into her computer. Then a smirk tugged at her lips. "Oh, economy? Thought so." Her colleague, a tall man named Rick, leaned over and chuckled. "I guess first class was a little out of budget, huh?" Jalen blinked, unsure if he'd heard right. "Excuse me?" Karen looked him up and down, her eyes lingering a bit too long on his skin color, then on his worn sneakers. Nothing, sweetheart. Just making sure you're at the right counter. You know, this line's for international travel. The economy passengers usually check in at the kiosks." Jalen's face tightened. "Yes, I know. My father told me to come to the desk." "Oh, your father told you," Rick muttered sarcastically. "Let me guess, he's a pilot? Or maybe the CEO?" Karen laughed softly, shaking her head. "Relax, kid. Just teasing." The passengers behind Jalen began whispering. Some looked away awkwardly. Others smirked. It was the kind of subtle humiliation that didn't need shouting to sting. It crept under the skin like a cold draft. Jalen took a slow breath. He didn't want to make a scene. His dad always taught him that respect wasn't about who you were. It was about who you chose to be when others weren't respectful. So he smiled. "That's fine. Just want to make sure I'm checked in." Karen printed his boarding pass, slid it across the counter, and said in a sweet but patronizing tone, "Have a nice flight, economy class hero." Jalen took the ticket quietly and walked towards security. But a woman standing nearby, dressed in a crisp navy business suit, had noticed everything. Her name was Amelia Graves, the airline's regional operations director. She'd been passing by to board the same flight for an inspection trip to London. Her sharp eyes followed the scene with growing disapproval. She knew the airline's customer service standards well, and what she'd just seen violated every one of them. Still, she said nothing yet. She wanted to see how the story would unfold. A few hours later, Flight 782 to London began boarding. Jalen found his seat, 28A, window side. He pulled out his notebook, where he often sketched airplane designs. Ever since he was little, he dreamed of becoming an aerospace engineer like his dad. He didn't care about money or status. He cared about innovation, about building something that made people's lives better. As he drew, the same two staffers from earlier came through the cabin, assisting passengers. When Karen spotted Jalen again, she whispered to Rick, "He actually made it on. Guess the economy crowd's growing bolder." Rick snorted. "Hope he doesn't ask for champagne." Well, Jalen heard them this time, but again, he said nothing. Suddenly, the flight attendants began murmuring. Something about a VIP boarding late. The captain had requested a short delay to accommodate a high-profile passenger. Everyone was curious. Cameras peeked out from phones as word spread like wildfire. And then the man appeared, tall, composed, dressed in a tailored Navy suit with subtle silver cufflinks. Mr. Malcolm Carter, founder and CEO of SkyConnect Airlines, the very airline operating this flight. His presence commanded respect without a single word. Passengers gasped. Some clapped quietly. The crew straightened their postures instantly. Karen's heart skipped. She had no idea the owner himself would be on board. "Mr. Carter, welcome, sir," she said eagerly, nearly tripping over her words. He smiled politely. "Thank you. I'll be sitting in first class." As he walked past, his eyes scanned the cabin with quiet interest. Then, something caught his attention. In the back of the economy section, seat 28, sat Jalen, his son. Malcolm's expression softened. He had deliberately booked his son in economy for this trip. He wanted Jalen to experience travel like any ordinary passenger, to see how the airline treated everyone, not just the rich and powerful. But as his gaze shifted, he noticed the tension in the crew's eyes, subtle guilt, The nervous whispers. He instantly sensed something wasn't right. He leaned toward Amelia, who had followed him onto the plane. "Did you see what happened earlier?" he asked quietly. She nodded once. "Yes, sir." "I did." Malcolm's jaw tightened. Good. Don't say anything yet." He proceeded to his first-class seat, but his mind was already turning. 2 hours into the flight, turbulence rocked the plane briefly. Passengers gasped and the cabin lights flickered. Jalen calmly fastened his seatbelt, helping the elderly woman beside him do the same. "Thank you, dear," she said, trembling slightly. "No problem, ma'am," he replied with a reassuring smile. "We're safe. The pilots are trained for this." The woman exhaled in relief. "You sound like you know airplanes," Jalen chuckled. "Hey, little, my dad works in aviation." From a few rows up, Karen happened over here and rolled her eyes. "Yeah, sure he does," she muttered under her breath. But just then, Amelia came walking through the cabin, checking passenger comfort. When she reached Jalen's row, she stopped. "Everything all right here, sir?" Jalen nodded. "Yes, thank you." She smiled kindly, then leaned down and whispered something to him. "Your father's very proud of you." Jalen blinked, confused, but before he could ask, she walked away. When the flight landed in London, all passengers were asked to remain seated for a moment. Confusion rippled through the cabin. Karen frowned. "What's going on?" Then the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, before disembarking, Mr. Carter, our company CEO, would like to make a brief announcement." A collective gasp spread across the rows. The man himself appeared moments later, walking down the aisle, not toward first class, but straight to economy, straight to seat 28A. The entire cabin turned to look. Malcolm stopped beside Jalen, smiling. "Son," he said warmly, "I hope you had a comfortable flight." Karen's mouth fell open. Rick froze. The color drained from both their faces. Jalen grinned sheepishly. "It was fine, Dad. Smooth landing?" Malcolm nodded, then looked directly at the two staff members. His tone remained calm, but his words cut like glass. "I understand that 2 of my employees had opinions about who deserves to be treated with respect in this cabin." Karen's face went pale. "Sir, I didn't mean." He held up a hand. "I'm sure you did, but you did, and every passenger here saw it." The cabin was silent. Even the air felt heavy. Malcolm continued, his voice firm but not cruel. My son flew economy today because I wanted him to understand humility. But I didn't expect to learn that humility is something my staff still needs to practice." He turned to Jalen. "You handled yourself better than most adults would have. I'm proud of you." Then to the passengers, he said, "For those who witnessed what happened, please know this airline stands for equality, not ego. Every seat matters. Every person matters." Applause broke out spontaneously, soft at first, then built until the entire cabin echoed with it. Karen's eyes welled with tears. She whispered, "I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't know." Malcolm looked at her steadily. "That's the problem. You didn't need to know who he was to treat him kindly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't humiliate her. But his words stayed in the air long after the applause faded." As the passengers began to disembark, Malcolm placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Come on, let's get some breakfast before the meeting." Jalen smiled. "Sure, Dad. But next time, can I sit in economy again?" Malcolm laughed. "After today, I think you've earned a promotion to first class." But Jalen shook his head. "I know. I like it back there. That's where the real people are." Malcolm studied his son's face, so full of maturity for someone so young, and realized that the lesson he'd hoped to teach had come full circle. As they walked out together, the same passengers who once watched the scene in silence now smiled at Jalen with admiration. The staff stood by the exit, eyes downcast but humbled. And for the first time that day, Jalen felt something stronger than anger or embarrassment. He felt grace. Because sometimes the people who are laughed at end up being the ones who teach everyone else what respect truly means.